Okay, there we go. Finally. Okay, now let's try it on here as well. How do I do this? Okay. Okay, I think I'm live. My YouTube and my Instagram. All right. I don't see anyone in here yet, so I will give it a minute. Also, my Bob Astrology Instagram. Apparently now they won't let me go live on there because I don't have enough followers. But welcome if you're here. So I'm live on my Instagram, my regular Instagram, and my YouTube. Like I said, I can't go live on my Bob Astrology anymore because apparently you have to have like 1,000 followers, and my Bob Astrology Instagram only has like 200, maybe. I don't know. It's not enough. So here we are. But I will share these clips from the YouTube onto my actual astrology Instagram since it's just like not working on my Bob Astrology one. I guess they trying to be like TikTok or something because TikTok doesn't let you go live without like a certain amount of followers. So now Instagram's doing that. So whatever, losers. But I'm on YouTube as well, so you can find me on YouTube at Bobby Perfection. All right, I'm gonna jump right into it because it took me a while to get everything set up to try to get on. For some reason, my YouTube was cutting up, but it's probably because Mercury's retrograde. So whatever, I should have expected it. Anyways, we're here. Welcome. Hi, Immaculate Ali. Hi, SF Zoo. Hi, K Gemma 89. Welcome. I'm excited to talk about the transits that are happening right now because we have a lot of really big generational, I know, generational transits that have changed and that will be changing. So Neptune just moved into Aries, Saturn just moved into Aries. Neptune spends about 12 to 15-ish years in a sign. Um, Saturn spends about 3 years in a sign. Then you also have later in the year, and I think it's June, that Uranus, which is another, is about 7 years, it spends in each sign, is moving into Gemini out of Taurus finally. Um, so yeah, lots of big shifts happening. I feel like you can feel them. And we had a little bit of a sample of the Saturn into Aries. Also, too, I'm a Pisces Saturn, so I just came out of my Saturn return. So shout out to people who were born 90, I think late 93 into late 95, mid 95. I think that's the years that you'd be a Saturn and Pisces person like me. Anyhow, yeah. So a couple things I'm gonna cover is Neptune and Aries. It'll spend its time in Aries from now all the way until 2039. Um, and what that looks like. Also, with it having this really big conjunction to Saturn, because Saturn is going to be in Neptune in Aries for the next 3 years. So you'll see 89, you're probably like a Sag. If you're born in 89, you're probably a Sag Saturn or somewhere between Sag, Capricorn. No, I think you're Sag. Either Sag or maybe right before that, depending on what month you were born in. Also, I'm responding to comments on both my YouTube comments and my Instagram comments. So if you see comments that aren't on the screens that you're in, that's why. Yes. Okay. Sad. Yes. Sad Saturn. That's kind of a cute one. I feel like Pisces was a hot mess. I'm sorry. I thought I was not going to make it out alive. But yeah. Happy to be alive and well and here, still in my right mind. healthy in my body. So yeah. Um, yeah. Okay, I feel like I'm a little also buzzy and a little all over the place. So yes, you're 89 too, SFZoo. So you're probably a Saturn as well. So you had your Saturn return a couple years back. Um, yeah, I'm a little jumpy because I was stressed about getting on here. So I'm kind of don't be mad at me because I'm a little bouncing around and I'm a little nervy because I'm trying to ground in. But anyways, yeah, I also want to talk about the connection between Aries and Aquarius because we also had a big Pluto transit shift. So Pluto moved into Aquarius within the past, was it last year or the year before? One of the two. I think it was last year, if I'm remembering correctly. And the connection between Aquarius and Aries, I love so much that they create a sextile to each other. So they're very supportive, these signs of each other. And I feel like a lot of the Aries energy is going to benefit from that Pluto and Aquarius and helping really push things forward and really bring forth new ideas and new ways of just seeing the world and seeing us as connective pieces in this world and what do they call it, like co-creators of our world. So yeah. First things I want to bring up also too, I just realized too, we have a big Jupiter and Cancer transit that's been happening for almost a year. It'll be moving out into Leo later this year, but I feel like this is a really important transit that's been going on that people don't really consider because we think of Jupiter as being like really exalted. It's considered exalted in Cancer, which some people look at as like, oh, that's a good thing. Like it's really happy here. But I look at planets that are exalted in a sign as like, oh, you just real comfortable. So you just cutting the fuck up. You know what I'm saying? Like it's like, oh, we feel at home here, so we just gonna really let it all out. So that's what I think about planets when they move into signs that they really like. For example, like the moon in Taurus is exalted, right? Jupiter in Cancer is exalted. The sun in Aries is exalted. Things like that. So yeah. All right. First of all, let's talk about Aries because there's a lot of Aries energy coming in. And Aries, for one, is the first sign of the zodiac. So you have this very new, fresh, baby like firecracker spark energy happening just all around. I like to think of Aries as the shit starter. The person who's gonna like be very courageous and get you to like move. If you think about your Aries friends or people with really heavy Aries in their chart, they're always coming up with new ideas. They're very inspired people. They always have something they want to do. They can be impulsive. They're also always ready to fight. Like they don't give a fuck. Like if you fuck with them, it's it's up and it's stuck. You know what I'm saying? Like they don't care. They're not gonna back down. And that's what Aries is all about. It's ruled by Mars. So it's the planet of Mars is the planet of war. It's the planet of strategy. It's the planet of separation and self-preservation. It also Aries is chaotic. It's the planet of self-preservation. So putting yourself first, those kinds of things. And if you think about if you're sometimes people will connect the signs with houses. So like Aries can kind of sometimes mimic similar things as the first house. And if you think about a chart, the first house is the moment you separate from your mother, right? The moment you push through and you become your own entity now. You're not connected to your mother's womb anymore. You're not in your mother's womb. You've come into the world and now you're your own being. So it's that separation and that coming into the self and really learning to you're like, I'm here now, right? So that's how I think of Aries energy. And I feel like Neptune moving into Aries, especially out of Pisces, because I also want to touch a little bit on that. One, Neptune, so when we've broken down kind of Aries and kind of the things of Aries. So think about all the things that you know about Aries. And if you want, you're welcome to just drop like in the comments, like any keywords or things that you know about Aries, right? And then we have the planet Neptune. Is it smart to always align to the houses due to the different combinations? I don't necessarily always align signs to the houses because I feel like you can shift them, right? And in different parts of the world, they have different like, so kind of like in Egyptian astrology, their first sign would be considered like Cancer. So, and you could put Cancer at the first house, and it makes sense in a way too, because Cancer is the mom and the baby. You know what I'm saying? And so it, I feel like you can play around with that. So I don't totally just like assign like Aries in the first house is the same, but a lot of people do, and that's to each his own. I don't totally do that. I like to have them have their own themes and meanings. They do have similarities, so yeah. Um, but yeah, then you have the planet Neptune. So we talked about Aries. We're going to talk about Neptune now. Neptune is all about kind of like imagination. It's escapism. Do you also incorporate Chinese astrology and numerology? Not a lot. I know that we're in the year of the horse. Is it the horse? I don't know, something like that. See, I don't really do a lot of Chinese astrology, but I think that we're in a horse year, fire horse possibly. I can't totally remember, but yeah. Numerology slightly, but not, I don't actually study numerology on a deep level the way that I've studied astrology, but I do, it sometimes comes up. So like if I see stuff at the 0 degree or like 22 degrees or certain degrees, things like that, I will kind of dive into if it feels significant when I'm reading a chart or looking at something specific, or if it comes in my subconscious is like, this is really interesting. So in that way, but I don't really study numerology, nor do I don't study Chinese astrology at all. I just kind of will know based on like people in the world that's like, oh yeah, we're moving into this year. Like, I buy my scratchers and they always have whatever animal and fire, like element and stuff like that. And I know that I'm a yin wood dog. So yeah. But other than that, no, I don't use it a whole lot of my stuff. Yeah. So Neptune is all about things dissolving. It's about seeing things as one in a way. It's all, if you think about Neptune, it's kind of like a gassy planet. So it's almost like illusions, delusions, um, things escaping you. So it rules a lot of things around, like, to me, similar things to like Pisces kind of energy around like drugs and connection, and this kind of we are one and blending in and merging energy. It also rules our fantasies, are kind of also in some ways, I think it has a lot of influence over like spiritual thought or kind of subconscious thoughts and stuff like that, or not subconscious, but I guess higher consciousness, I guess, in a way. So yeah, and if you think about Neptune moving from Pisces, which is a sign that modern day rules, right? So having this very kind of double impact. I like to look at a lot of what I've seen over the past 14 years, right? If you noticed, a lot of the energy with Neptune being in Pisces, we had a big influx of like drug use and a lot of like drug, and it's always been like people always use drugs, but I feel like it shifted a lot with Neptune moving into Pisces, where you've seen a lot of one big pharma drugs, right? People having a lot more anxieties, these hidden Neptune also can be like things that are kind of hidden to the consciousness. So these like themes around, or these things around like anxieties or disorder, like personality disorders and mental health things that you can't physically see, but they're there. That needed to be, now all of a sudden need to be treated with medications and drugs. So that was a big thing that I noticed with Neptune moving into Pisces, and also a lot more like slow drugs, right? Like people wanting to do, like, if you notice the past like 15 years, it was big, like the early like 2000s, or what, we're 2026, so like 2010s, I feel like it was a lot about lean and slower stuff that kind of slowed you down and made you a little more like reclusive and things like that, which is very Neptune and Pisces to me. Versus like if you think about the crack epidemic, or the era of Neptune being in Sag, that was when the crack era happened, and people were much more like, it was a fire type of with those drugs. It was very like fast. It was very overt. It was like party like. It was very people were still very functional addicts and very much like still very super creative. And not to say that they're not now, but I feel like it was a different taste to it, whereas very much a fire kind of energy with like the crack epidemic and things like that, and then having that Neptune now be in another Jupiter sign, which is Pisces. This past 14 years, you've seen how different that texture was with how people were on drugs, if you notice, and it had a lot to do with mental health in a very obvious way versus like, oh, we're getting into drugs because we partying and we having fun. Back in like, the late 70s, the in the 80s, it was like people were doing it because it was like it was a social thing, right? Which is very sad to me versus like Pisces being more like people are trying to escape and trying to get away from their reality in a different kind of way. I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah. So that's something that comes up. And then now we're going to see, as you're going to see too, like how it moved back then when it moved out of Sag into Capricorn. It was like a whole systematic, obviously it was done systematically, and it was just this huge like crumbling of structures, the family structure, things like that, right? With Neptune moving to Capricorn, you've seen that all these structures just came apart. These like family structures, how people started, you start seeing the effects of the crack epidemic and how people lost their housing, like physical things where people were losing their physical things, like getting like couldn't take care of their housing, blah blah, blah, all this kind of stuff, whatever. And then I feel like now we're going to see the effects in this very fiery way. And I'm very curious to see how the impacts will look moving from the Pisces Neptune into Aries. I think of Neptune too because Neptune rules and Pisces energy rules a lot of like film, television, like these different worlds, right? If you think about Neptune in that way, it's escapism. It's like different realities. So you think about film, music, TV, other ways of being between worlds, basically. And so the texture of the music was I feel like music was very different. Well, if you notice now, as Neptune is moving into Aries, it's very much like, oh, that's Atlanta sound. Everybody's like really differentiating the sounds versus like when Neptune was in Pisces, a lot of the music people were like, it all sounded the same. Everything sounded the same. Everybody's, making music that sounds the same. And now you're starting to see people being like, that's Atlanta sound. Oh, that's Bay Area sound. Oh, that's this. And I'm talking mostly about like hip hop, R&B. You also see people being like, just calling out more of like, oh, K-pop is, it's called, it's basically R&B that they're putting, K-pop over whatever, all this kind of stuff. You're seeing these different kind of separations in a sense, right? Which is what Aries is about. Aries is like, actually, this isn't the same. We are individuals in a way, right? Whereas Pisces is very much like, we're all the same. We can all get along. Me and the tree are no different, And Aries is like, actually, bitch, I'm myself and you're you, and I'm a fighter and I'm gonna go to war about mine. I think too, another thing that I'm noticing too, and this started really coming to a head too, especially with Saturn making its move into Aries earlier sometime last year. Then it went back into Pisces and now it's fully in Aries. But the delineations, right? Noticing now that people are really speaking up about what their culture is. I'm not Black, or I'm Black American. That's very different from Brazilian or Dominican or da 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 da. And you see a lot of the they're calling them on Twitter like delineation wars or something. I don't know, something like that. But you see people being like, yeah, this is my culture, and it is a difference. We're not all just like generally this blanket Black, right? Or things like that. Or you even see people things like coming up with all the immigration stuff. It makes sense. Like people one way or another going back to their homelands. I've noticed a lot of people whether it's like through, and some of this stuff I feel like too, because I don't want to get super political and whatever. Some of this stuff is also media, right? That's giving us these ideas and impressions of what shit is. But to talk about the idea of Neptune moving into Pisces and Saturn moving into Pisces and people thinking more about self-preservation and like who am I? Going back to their homelands. I've had so many people tell me, "Oh yeah, I'm going home to go visit my homeland and go be on my land," like things like that. And also you see yes, exactly, Anjane, more independent individualism energy. And you see a lot of like the media is putting out all this like, oh, immigration stuff, blah blah blah, and like ICE and da 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 da, which, you know, I won't get into that because you never can really trust the media anyway. But yes, a lot of the things around people going back to their land, their cultural roots, their roots, and things like that, I think is a big thing that's coming up too, especially with the Saturn and Neptune being conjunct for the next for the next few years. Um, yeah, a lot of separation and independence energy, and a lot of too with the Saturn being in Aries. There, Saturn rules structure, Saturn rules tradition, Saturn rules limits and time, and it rules kind of authoritative energy. And so you also see this new thinking around the structures that we have. I've been saying this for a lot of years around for the past couple of years, when we had COVID, when Saturn was in Capricorn, COVID hit. And I think that was the beginning of the end. And people didn't really realize that. Um, so you seen kind of like this breaking down of these structures. Like people weren't having to go to 9 to 5s anymore. That was crazy. Like people don't have to go to work and they can still like we have to be at home all day, but people can still like be able to eat, like, it was like a different way of living. And then when we had to come back from COVID, it was like a lot of buildings couldn't afford to keep keep their buildings and stuff, because people are like, why, when we can work from home? Why would you sit in traffic? These structures that we were like so accustomed to and being in these systems and how they were, it had started to crumble of like, actually we don't have to do it like this. And then you seen as Saturn moved into Aquarius, it was like new ideas around, right? Aquarius is all about the mind and solid thinking, and almost like futuristic thinking of like what this could actually be. And so as it moved into Aquarius, which is also a Saturn root sign, you see more of that and seeing how people started to use technology a lot more, right? It became like we don't then you see a lot of stuff like telehealth now. So people are getting their healthcare through fucking Zooms and shit like that, which is, it has its ups and downs, I feel like. But a lot more access through the internet and social things and networking, right? Versus having to rely on these specific structures that you had to go to the hospital, or you had to go here to get this or get that, or you have to just all these different things. And then when it moved into Pisces, I feel like there was a lot of kind of breaking down. I think I remember saying in one of my old lives right before Saturn moved into Pisces, or right when it moved into Pisces, I think I was talking a lot about how a lot of addictions and stuff like that will either people will just cut them out completely or just stop, or you'll see a lot of people going deeper into addictions, right? With Pisces, because Pisces is water and Saturn is like structure. And how are you going to structure water? Water just flows and goes and does what it wants. So I think as it moved into Pisces, you've seen a lot of belief systems changing too, right? A lot of spirituality kind of, I noticed a lot of people questioning things like their belief system. So it could have been religion, or maybe even if you stopped believing in certain religions, maybe you started moving back into like having a relationship with God or whatever your religion is, or things like that. I noticed with the Saturn in Pisces, a lot of shifts with just how we even like our spiritual kind of practices, how we taking information to create our belief systems. Because if you think about what's on the axis of Pisces, is the other side of that is Virgo, which is very logic and like detail oriented, right? And purifying information and cutting out what, and having a lot of discernment. Whereas Pisces is much more like being more intuitive and kind of feeling things out and having more of a understanding and belief, right, in things. So I think we've seen a lot of that shift in that kind of way with Saturn moving into Pisces, and a lot of the deeper background work. Whereas like Saturn being in Capricorn is so much more obvious because it is physical things. Capricorn is an earth sign, so it has to do with our physical things, our money, our structures, um, our actual buildings, those kinds of things. And then it moving into Aquarius was like, you've seen it shift a lot of the minds and how we connected, and the ways that we were able to connect. So like how I'm now able to do lives and talk about this stuff, right? Obviously we've been able to connect through phones and stuff like that, but now we have, like, the technology has just jumped over the past couple of years, especially with the Saturn and Pisces, I mean the Saturn and Aquarius, and then also the huge jump of Pluto moving into Aquarius and out of Capricorn as well, which was also adding to that that breakdown of these systems and things like that. And then now with Saturn moving into Aries, we're moving into a more action-based energy, and also your physical bodies and physical energy. Aries is all about, if you think about Aries, I think about Aries as the manifestation of Mars, right? Because Mars rules Aries and it rules Scorpio, right? So how I like to think about Aries is, if Mars is manifesting through Aries, it's like you're in high school. It's like you play hella sports. Whereas like Scorpio is more of like ancient warriors to me, if that makes sense. So it has that very fresh, kind of newer energy, versus like Scorpio being kind of more these like really ancient kind of warriors and long term and things like that. Moved into spirituality, then dropped religion. I was definitely realized and never asked why I was doing what the fuck I was doing until the universe sat me down during COVID. Definitely felt like a timeline shift as much as a lifestyle shift. Yes. Yeah, we had a whole, I mean, we literally, I think too, with Saturn moving into Pisces, here's another thing that I thought about too, is how we really need the mundane, which is the other side of that is Virgo. We really need routine and like pay attention to details, because if you notice, it got really bad. People started, like, I'm seeing so many people with a lot more mental health issues post COVID, from having to just be inside all the time and not being in a routine, not going to not being having it not being forced to not really be social as much and not really connect with people, not doing your everyday things that you do. Like, there was a time where I was like, bro, I could be in the house all day and never go outside and get sunlight. That's fucking crazy post COVID, because I was so used to just like, well, I don't got to go to work. I don't have to do this. Like, I'm doing everything on the computer in the house. You know what I'm saying? So that was also a big, interesting shift, that I noticed too, with Saturn being in Pisces, that added to a lot of people's mental health stuff and just feeling like kind of lost in space, lost in time. I think a lot of, if you notice too, with Saturn and Pisces, I feel like a lot of people have been feeling like time is just moving in a weird way, whether they feel like it's sped up or they're just like, I don't know, like feel like we lost those years, like they feel like they just disappeared. That's very Pisces, Saturn and Pisces, to me. So yeah, those are some of the things that I'm thinking about. And then I'm also thinking about, with the Neptune and the Saturn moving into Aries, how the impacts of our physical brains, right? Because Pisces energy is all about the deeper subconscious things, but Aries literally rules the head, you know? And so Saturn moving into this, I think people should also be really paying attention to their brains, paying attention to their heads, their faces. A lot of, I think, especially if you have Aries heavy Aries placements or like sun, moon, rising, those kind of things. Injuries to the head, lots of headaches, those kinds of things coming up. Heat in the brain, like heat in the head, inflammation, that kind of stuff coming up as that could possibly be something that comes up a lot for especially Aries placements, but in general, I remember doing Saturn and Pisces. I had so many fucking foot injuries, like over those 3 years. I never had so many injuries to my feet. I literally like had small fractures in my feet, or just like fucking weird fucking somebody dropped a bottle on my foot. It just was crazy, weird shit that was happening to my feet during Saturn and Pisces. So I always tell people too, whatever body part that's ruled by the sign that Saturn's moving into, really take care, just like have a little more like hyper focus on it in a way, or just take care of that part of your body, like your brain, your face, your head, your eyes, your ears, those things, because Aries rules the head. Your hair, I wonder if a lot of people lose a lot of hair. Get y'all sacred drops. Get your hair routines together. Take care of your hair. All that kind of stuff. Stress, right, leads to hair loss. So yeah, some of the other things I'm really excited for with Neptune and Saturn being in Aquarius, specifically, even more so. Yes, Neptune specifically is like music and hearing new sound. I feel like we're gonna get a lot of newer, fun music that feels more alive. I think we're gonna have a lot more inspiration happening. We're gonna see a lot of also physical manifesting of our dreams. Um, a lot of physical energy. And then I think with Saturn, this is really going to help people, especially if you're going through your Saturn return. I have a friend, and I love this. This I have a friend who's a Pisces rising, so she wasn't going through a Saturn return. She's a Pisces rising, but she was having a kind of hard Saturn transit on in her first house. And literally, I remember, because I like watched the people around me, and I remember like watching her at the very beginning, because I was like, okay, I'm gonna keep her in mind during this transit, because I study in real time. And at the beginning, I remember her being like, it kind of was like, oh, I kind of want to move and get my own place. She's young. So she was like, I want to get my own place, and was living with other people and family or whatever. And kind of being like, oh, I want to get my own place and things like that. And just was kind of having a hard time, I feel like, in a way, um, just having these very like internal, just like self like things, like going through kind of different things within herself, like of like, who am I, what do I want? And you could physically, like, literally see this so clear. And literally, like, a week before Saturn was moving out of Pisces, she was like, I got a place, I'm moving into my own place. And I was like, what the fuck, this shit is so literal sometimes, like, like literally having that experience of like really coming into her own womanhood, and like her own separation, into like really solidifying herself and like what she wanted, and moving into this very, because Saturn's all about time and maturing and responsibility, right? And so like really moving into this more mature version of herself, and this more like having to take care of her own things and all this stuff. And it was literally in such exact alignment with that whole Saturn transit, because I remember watching her over the past 3 years, and having those eclipses the last year and a half hit between Virgo and Pisces in her first and seventh house. It was just really interesting to see. So I say that to say that now that Saturn is moving into Aries, there's going to be I think a lot of this Saturn transit is going to be also how to hone in your desires and your fire energy, and really focus it. If you've ever watched, I love the show, the cartoon, not the blue people, but Avatar: The Last Airbender. And the when they go into the Fire Nation, and they like focus on Zuko, because he's so fiery, and if you see Zuko and his uncle Iroh is like Saturn post Aries transit, right? He's so like really knows how to focus his fire energy. But there's this, they say some, it's a saying in there where he's like talking to one of the like master firebenders, and he says something about fire is the hardest element to master because it's so destructive. Like you have to contain it. It can't just be free. It has to constantly be contained and like manipulated. And I'm not saying it exactly how they said it, but it's one of those elements that you have to, like, water can just flow, right? Obviously water can be dangerous in a certain way if you go to an ocean or something like that. But really, that's crazy. Okay, but and like air, it just floats. It's just like all around, right? Obviously it has to be some sort of like big mix of things for air, water, and earth to really harm you in a way, right? Obviously they can, but fire is just, it's from its inception, it can be it's destructive and it'll spread, right? If you think about Aries, Leo, Sag, Aries is the spark, so the start of that fire. Leo is that fire burning all night consistently, and then Sag is the spreading of that fire. It's a wildfire, right? And so whenever things go into fire, we're given this opportunity to really, one, ignite our fires, but also learn how to really hone in and focus them. So I think that's what this Saturn and Aries transit will be a lot about, because Saturn brings structure and maturity and a big focus on growth through time and authority. So I think one of the good things about this transit is learning how to also really take care of our physical bodies. And like, I think a lot of people will become more active in like having more structure around like working out or whatever they like to do. Maybe it's dance or whatever you physically like to do, feeling more energy around that. Or you'll see some people really get, it's always kind of like you'll see these two sides of it, right? Where it's like some people become more focused in a certain way, and then other people might, depending on what's going on in their chart, they might, like, we're all one bad day away from, having a fucking mental breakdown or shit like that. So it's like some people you'll see might be struggling with those things. That might be a big struggle. So yeah. And then another thing that I was thinking about with Saturn moving into Aries for the next 3 years is learning how to slow down, because Aries can be very impulsive, right? So noticing like Aries placements having to kind of really like, oh, that's gonna fuck me up if I do that, right? Or doing things and having harsher consequences for them without, if you didn't think about it, or if you just rushed, right? But it's also about sharpening your instincts, because Aries is so much of instinct, right? And like that's the beauty of Aries, and that's why Aries can move so well off courage and just like be fueled from desire, because it has such good Aries energy. Aries have such good instincts, and so it's like honing your instincts, being able to really align with your desires and mature in a way that you're not just making a bunch of decisions that don't make sense for you, or making a bunch of decisions because you just want it in that moment. It's like actually thinking of longevity. I think Aries can use this transit really well because of what Saturn brings to it. And yeah, the other side of Aries is Libra, and Saturn, I believe, is exalted in Libra, which is all about like fairness and justice and things like that. So structure is like, okay, cool. Like everything's fair here, everything's working out fine, everybody's getting what they need. So in Aries, it'll have a little bit of a harder time, but I don't necessarily think of a planet being in its quote unquote fall as a total negative thing, because I can see where a planet in its exaltation is like just hella lazy, or just like um so overtly just ridiculous because it's so comfortable there, and it's just like kind of taking advantage almost. So yeah, hopefully that all makes sense. I'm looking over my notes to see what else is coming up. I think too, the other side of this, we'll see a lot more like people talk about like, oh, we're heading into a war. Oh, is it a war? And it's like, bro, have we not always been in wars? Has there not just always been wars pretty much throughout history all the time? I mean, especially if you're like a nigga, it's like we've been at war for thousands of years. Like, I just don't like, I feel like, yeah, you're probably just like, I feel like more of the world is like seeing it all because we have the touch of like the Aquarius with technology and us being able to like see more like across the world and like see that, oh, this shit is happening. A lot of this shit is just happening everywhere. And a lot, you see a lot of, this is where like the Aquarius with the Aries energy is really beautiful because you see a lot of people advocating, right? Aries energy to me is also such advocating energy. It's like I'm gonna fight for what I believe in, and I'm gonna fight for myself. So I think that having these transits are so necessary right now because we have been in a state. I feel like we have been in such a state of like just going with the flow, like okay, and this very like, oh, we're all just here and just da 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 da. And so I feel like we need this very fucking fired up energy to be like, yeah, I actually do need to like take better care of myself. I need to be focused on like actually preserving my culture, like being very proud in my culture. I need to really focus on like self-preservation, the things that Aries pulls out of us. And then you see with Aquarius, it is so much of like, yes, we are individuals, and that's how we're able to actually function together because everybody brings a different piece of something into this like life that we coexist in. Like if we all were just the same, it would just like it wouldn't work, you know? Um so I'm really excited. I feel a lot of I'm also a Leo, so I love fire energy. We on World 3000. Yes, exactly. Yeah. And yes, exactly. Focus on your purpose and don't get sucked into bullshit. Exactly. And Aries is so much like, yeah, fuck all of that. What about me? Aries is so like people say that Leo is a selfish sign, but Aries is selfish. Aries is like, I'm gonna get what I need. Fuck everybody else. And I think a lot of, especially Black folks, need that energy. Need to be like, yeah, fuck everybody else. This is about us, right? So it's not lost on me that we're having a lot of these like delineation things and you know, land back and yeah, who are we? Because guess who is the people in the world that have been like literally have lost so much of like there has been active attacks on like erasing us and our history and who we are and like our contributions to the world. It's like yes, we need this energy. We need to be like, actually, yeah, no, my grandma, this is my grandma's book from fucking 1900, early 1900s. Yes, this actually was going on. Like, yes, these are recipes that were ours. No, we weren't all from there. We didn't all come from Africa. Yes, we were on this land. Like this should be happening. It's supposed to be happening and we need it to be happening because I feel like there has been a lot of passive energy over the past couple decades. Very just like going along to get along. Also, a lot of delusion with Pisces energy. There's been so much delusion of like belief in and just like really die hard belief in like systems and things that were not made for really any of us. So, um, yeah, I'm very excited to see what comes from the Aries Saturn transit and with the taste of Neptune there as well. And how Neptune's going to be how I think it's like really cool that you have this Neptune transit with Saturn for the first couple years, like first 3 years, with Saturn being in Aries, because there's also this level of Neptune's going to constantly remind us of our dreams and also help us stay focused on like manifesting what it is that we actually want and what we see in our minds as what our reality could be really. So yeah. um what else? Oh, another thing that I wrote down in my notes was a lot of the body dysmorphia, a lot of the like body changes people are making. I'm very curious to see how that's going to shift as Saturn moves into Aries, because I think with Pisces we had such deep my iPhone, very deep, whoops, ideas about what we should look like. I mean, people doing insane stuff to their literal physical bodies is crazy to me. Me as a massage therapist and somebody who studies the body, I'm like, and people can do whatever they want, right? But surgery in itself is an injury to the body. Like, you could die. And you're also like creating so much, like, every time you get cut into scar tissue, things are being like literally cut and harmed. It's not like there's a lot of pros to surgery. I just don't think there are. You know, like, I think surgery was meant to be a to me, surgery is something that's meant to be a last resort. So, like, you get shot and they got to take a bullet out of you, they got to do surgery, right? And the way that it's transformed into be these very like casual things that people just do now, to me, it's crazy. As somebody who studies the body and who works with a lot of trauma in the body, and see a lot of people that like I had a client who had breast cancer and had to obviously get her some of her breast tissue removed. And this client was like telling me how she was having trouble breathing and the doctor couldn't figure out why. And I'm like, well, probably because you have hella scar tissue on your fucking chest, like literally clogging up your fucking rib cage, all this shit, because they literally cut hella shit out. And your body's trying to like save itself and protect itself, so it just slaps on hella scar tissue. So if you think about that shit like that, and people are just doing like, I don't know, just cutting parts of their body or putting foreign things in their body for like, which is like whatever, to each its own. Like, it obviously works for some people and makes people feel better, but it's also like the fact that we're not like, people don't realize that you feel like that because of society. It's not like your own, like, you're influenced by society and what society tells you what you should be and how people should look. Like, we're so influenced and we don't realize that it's not coming from like your original thoughts. So I'm also very interested to see how original thought comes back and like, oh wait, like I've been in this fucking like just illusionary world, especially social media, and I'm making decisions about my own body because of that, or because of how society is so fucked up that it makes people feel so out of touch and so out of body. Like, I just think it's really fucked up, and it's also like part of it feeds so much of big pharma, because if everybody's mentally ill and having issues or like not feeling at home in themselves and not feeling safe in their bodies and not feeling well in their bodies, it feeds so much of the medical field, because you have to give people medication, you have to do these surgeries, you have to do, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's feeding all of that, and it's just about, at the end of the day, for quote unquote the powers that be, or them in a way, it's about money and power. It's not about like actually helping people. So I think that's something that I'm interested to see too, is how that is going to shift and how people's perception of themselves changes with Aries, because Aries is so much about the self. And yeah, I'm just curious to see what it's going to look like going forward, and if that's going to be more of a negative shift or positive or things like that, you know. Very curious about that as well, and how that whole thing is going to shift, because I feel like I've seen so much of people feeling just not well in themselves and then making these very permanent physical changes to basically try to solve a lot of psychological issues, because there's literally so much psychological warfare happening right now through our media. There's just war in every aspect, right? You think about our food, we're being attacked through our food, through the air we breathe. we're being attacked in media, so it's so much war happening on just you being alive. And so yeah, I think Aries energy is so necessary right now. And I know it's gonna feel very hot and rough and separating and very like severing and final in some ways, but it's definitely something that we need. We need to get back to ourselves. We need to find ways to preserve ourselves better, to treat our bodies better. We need to start just taking better care of ourselves. And I think the Saturn and Aries transit is going to like really like kick down on that. And you're going to see really harsh consequences if you don't get in alignment with what your body needs, what your mind needs, all those kinds of things. So yeah. What else is happening? We're also moving. We have I believe it's the final eclipse in Virgo coming up on, I think, the 3rd. So it's also just been a really chaotic, I feel like, time right now because we have a Mercury retrograde. Hi, I don't know who you are. I gotta figure out who you are. It is little Bobby. We also gotta figure out because you have Mercury retrograde right now, which is affecting our day-to-day lives, right? Mercury it spends about 3 weeks to sometimes a little over a month based on like its orbit in each sign. And so it affects us on a day-to-day basis. So with Mercury retrograde, I think people get really like stressed out about these. And I'm just going to say, bro, slow down, touch some grass. Like, don't get really stressed out. But also, like, when Mercury goes retrograde, I always think of like less. I mean, you guys see, I just told you I was struggling so hard earlier trying to get on this fucking live and set up all my goddamn devices. Because maybe I should have just had an in-person talk. But I think about Mercury as being like, get back to the basics, the very basics of communication, face-to-face interaction. Giving somebody a call if you can't be face-to-face, right? Versus like texting people. Slowing down, like doing one thing at a time, not trying to do hella shit all at the same time. I noticed for me, especially because I'm a Gemini rising, so I'm ruled by Mercury pretty heavily. Also have my Mars in Gemini on my rising, so I'm pretty heavily ruled by Mercury in a certain way. And for me, I have to just slow down. Like my brain can't function at the speed it normally does, which is like I can get about 10 to 15 things done in a day. When Mercury's retrograde, I'm at about anywhere between 3 to 7 things that I can probably get done. I'm still pretty cool, but it's like I'm gonna see some errors later down the line where I'm like, fuck, I sent this email and I put the wrong date. That's gonna irritate me. So it's like slow down, double check things. Also, just like it's such a good time to study. I think personally that Mercury retrogrades are such a good time to go back and study shit because your brain will really be able to retain stuff. I think that during Mercury retrogrades for me, this might not be the same for everybody, but during Mercury retrogrades for me, it's so much easier for me to retain information during retrogrades, especially something that I tried to study or something that I have already looked at that I was like, it didn't really capture me at a certain time. During Mercury retrogrades, it's a lot easier for me to like retain information and kind of go back and study something. I also just every Mercury retrograde always see old high school friends, people from high school. Look at my freaking chats. I'm like, oh my god, it's little Bobby. Yes, it's me. Nice to see you. 10,000 years later. It's like people pop up from my past so much that are like high school friends or childhood friends or even exes. Sometimes they just start to swirl around in the psyche and then manifest in everyday life. And I don't know if that happens for other people, but it always happens for me. Every time it's like clockwork. I'll start seeing just people from the past. Yeah, so don't be afraid of Mercury retrogrades. Take your time. It's reminding you to slow down and get back to the basics and get back to like the earth, really. Today I went on a like hike and that was really nice. So stuff like that, like fucking touching grass and like having actual communication with nature and the world and not just fucking social media and all these things outside of yourself, right? Um yeah, travel is always kind of funky during Mercury retrogrades, missed flights or just change flights, shit like that. You know, this is always happening. Car accidents can be a thing quite a bit when Mercury goes retrograde. Um, any kind of exchanges, stuff like that. So just keeping those things in mind and just giving yourself more time than you normally would. So if you're waking up late and then trying to rush to get ready, you're working against yourself. Okay, slow down, wake up a little bit earlier if you need to, if you know that it takes you a while, those kinds of things. Like just do what you need to do for yourself so that you can have a more seamless, smooth day-to-day stuff. Let's see, I got like 4 minutes. I want to really keep this at just an hour. I think the last thing I want to maybe touch on, Jupiter and Cancer. So we've been having a Jupiter and Cancer transit, and I remember talking about this right before it went into Cancer, I believe. And I talked a lot about how Cancer rules like the mother, it rules family, and so seeing a lot of growth within families or things come up within the family unit. Because Jupiter is considered like a benevolent planet or like a really like good luck planet, but it also is like growth over time. It's not like changes that happen right away. It is slow growth and then you see the effects of that growth. And so Jupiter being in Cancer is very, it likes to be in Cancer, right? And it's been retrograde for some months now, and it's going to end its retrograde, I believe, March. I think it goes out of its retrograde like March, somewhere like in the middle of March. I think like the 11th or something like that, somewhere between there. But having the Jupiter and Cancer transit, I think a lot of people, I definitely underestimated this transit because I was like, oh, it's going to be nice because it likes to be in Cancer. And sometimes I can just be a really annoying optimist. But this transit specifically for me has been like, what the fuck? It's been so much shit coming up that like we've been like within like family stuff or just like I think for even a lot of people just like mother wounds or just like the relationship with their mothers or like the women in their families and things like that. I'm seeing too, especially with men, there's this almost like this there's been this like disconnect with men and specifically like their mothers or women in their life that is coming to a big head. I feel like with this within this transit and seeing all these kinds of like feelings and just stuff coming up around our relationships to like our mothers and the women in our lives, which has been for me, I feel like watching this different people's lives and seeing what's been going on, people think of healing, right, in Jupiter and growth as like, oh, you go to a spa and it's so nice and you have this very like pretty idea of like healing, but it can be so ugly, it can be so painful. It's like if you get shot and you got to heal from a fucking gunshot wound, bro, ain't shit about that pretty. It hurts, you're in pain, you have to learn how to move whatever that body part is again, like you have to wake up the nerve endings, all this shit. Like it's not a pretty easy process that we think that healing is. And so I think every time I think about Jupiter going into something else, yes, it's going to expand things and it's going to make things more fruitful, but it's also going to like get you to get to the bottom of shit, and not just like, you don't get to bear the fruit if you didn't, like really tend to the seeds and tend to the soil. So I feel like that is what I've been seeing, especially with Jupiter being in Cancer, is like, yeah, you want the cake, but you have to put into it and have to really move through the kind of tough parts of, just do the work, basically, I guess is what I'm saying. Do the work. You got to do the work. And nobody escapes the work. Nobody escapes life, okay? Um we just don't. So I think that Jupiter and Cancer transit has been very like cleansing and healing, but very painful, and just like, you think about it, it's emotional. Like, it's water, it's in a water sign, and it's in the mother waters. So it is so much of just like our own emotional kind of like blueprint coming up, I think, with Jupiter being in Cancer. The way that we deal with our emotions, like if some of us are like emotionally stunted, I think a lot of that has been coming up, of like, how do you get past being emotionally cut off or shut down. And like, a lot of people have been feeling more emotional. I feel like I've seen a lot more men talking about like men cry and having a lot of deeper conversations and about what they feel and things like that. And then I see a lot of women also. I feel like, just, I think a lot of women are falling a lot more into this very like, if you notice, the theme has been like, oh, soft life, soft life, soft life, all this shit, right? So I feel like a lot of women too have kind of like realized like, bro, I need to like not be so like trying to like being forced to kind of be more in a masculine energy and having to be very like driven and da 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 da. I feel like a lot of women are also starting to be like, nigga, I'm not a man. I'm a woman. Like, I want to be soft. I want to feel good. I want to like adorn. I want to like have fun. And that's something that's really beautiful that I've seen with the Jupiter and Cancer transit, is like how women and how men are kind of also both experiencing it, with it being such a feminine, um, motherly, nurturing, Jupiter being in such a nurturing, motherly sign. And I think connection is such a big thing. Like, I feel like there was a point where we were so wrapped up in like the social medias and and obviously those stuffs are still a big thing, like AI and all this stuff. But I also think that there's a piece of this transit that's bringing us back to like connection and wanting to be connected to people that we love and familiar energy and not being so distant. So wanting to reconnect those wires with like our loved ones, and I think that has been like really beautiful to see, like a lot of reconnection with Jupiter being in Cancer, and like reconnecting with our own kind of like inner just like nurturing, finding ways to nurture ourselves better and take care of ourselves better in that way too. Which I kind of like a little bit the Aries Cancer energy together, because I think of like Mars as such a protector of the moon. And if you think about like the moon, it rules our subconscious, our emotions, our more receptive side, like our response, right, to things. And so a lot of times I feel like Mars energy gets a bad rep because it's so like considered like aggressive and just like fighting, but it's trying to protect the moon, like in that sensitive side and that soft side of us, and that more like just receptive side that's like feeling things. So it's like lashing out because of that. So me personally, I kind of like, in a certain way, not all the time, but the mix of like the Aries energy with the Cancer energy, because it is like self-preservation and take care of yourself. Like, we're gonna fight, but we also gonna love. Like, we're gonna fight, but we're gonna fight for, what's right. We're gonna fight for our people. Like, we still gonna take care of our people. We might fight, but we still love each other. I feel like it has so much of that really beautiful, like family self-preservation energy together. So I really like it. Just like I like the Aries and Aquarius energy together, because Aquarius is looking at the world and thinking about humanity and like a utopia, or like what the structures can be, and like how it can work for everybody. And then Aries is going to fight for that. You know what I'm saying? So having the Pluto in Aquarius right now is like, how is this shit going to work with all of us? Not just for one person, not just for one group of people, not just for this person. How can we make this shit work for everybody? Where everybody's needs are met, and Aries is going to fight for that. Aries is going to be like, well, this is what we finna do. And we can still be individuals and still work together, right? I feel like I love that. So, yeah, I think I'm gonna wrap it up. There's some other transits coming, but I don't feel the need. I think I put on here about like Uranus moving into Gemini, but I think I'm gonna wait for a later live, because it's happening a little bit later in the. I think it moves in June or something like that. So in a couple months. So I'll save that for a bigger conversation on just that in a later live. But that's something I'm excited about, and I'm also nervous about, because I'm a Gemini rising, and I know Uranus transits. Them motherfuckers hit you, and it's like everything's changing, and it's fast. So that's what I will say. If you have Gemini placements, I'm curious to see, how life is going to change for you. Because one, Uranus can be destructive, but it's destructive in a way that it's going to propel you forward and put you where you need to be, almost. And like almost like pivot your whole life. I remember having a Uranus transit back in Taurus on my moon. And I swear to God, it was like exact. Like the day it hit my moon, it was on my moon for a couple months. But I remember almost specifically like the day that it hit the degree of my moon, I was like, I'm moving. And the opportunity just presented itself for me to be able to move. And I remember literally, and I'm somebody that like, I was very hell bent on like staying in my place. I'm so fixed, especially if you think about being a Taurus moon. I'm like, no, like, please don't make me change. And it's like, I can change. I can be adaptable because I'm a Gemini rising. So if I have to be adaptable, I will. But for the most part, I don't even like people touching shit in my room and moving shit around. So it's like that hit, and I was just like, I guess I'm moving. And then the opportunity literally just came about. Like I didn't have to do anything crazy to shift. It just was all set up for me to do that. And it was like, what the fuck? And I had been in my home at that time for my whole adult life at the time. So that's what I kind of think of when I think about like Uranus transits, is these like very quick and just like things are just aligning for you to make that shift. So yeah, little preview of that. But yeah, hopefully this was helpful. And you can look at where Aries is in your chart to kind of see what themes are going to be really focused on for the next couple years. Well, for the next 3 years with Saturn being there, and then for the next like 14 years with Neptune being there, and those kinds of things, right? So if you're an Aries rising, it's your first house. I have a little sister, one of my little sisters, she's literally an Aries rising, and I'm watching her right now, and it's like, I see her literally, she's going through the whole like Saturn being there, becoming her own little person, like just like really maturing into like into like womanhood. It's like crazy to watch. And she's having that Aries, the next 3 years, she's gonna be an adult by the time this transit is over, like literally an adult. So sometimes it's like exactly literal like that, right? If you're Aries second house, it's gonna have to do with your values, what you find valuable in yourself, how you value yourself, what you find valuable in other people. It might even specifically or literally have to do with your money, the ways that you make money, your talents, and how you, or the things that you attach to yourself, right? Third house is going to have to do with your environment, your day-to-day kind of mundane, everyday tasks. It might have to do with your siblings specifically, or childhood friends, those kinds of things, or friends and like young friends that you've had since you were a kid, aunts, uncles. It might have to do with your grandparents if you have Aries in your third house. So look out for your grandparents, take care of them. Take care of your extended family. If it's in your fourth house, it might have to specifically do with your parents. take care of your parents, watch out for them, try to help them. It might have to do with more of your like housing, like your home. You might be sometimes people with Saturn kind of moving through like hitting house stuff and like home stuff and like root stuff. You might move or you might end up actually somebody I know that I actually think is it makes me think. Okay, but I won't keep going off into tangents. But fourth house, parents, home, your kind of emotions, like who you are, when you're most comfortable, like behind the scenes, the stuff that you keep private to yourself. Fifth house, your creativity, your dating life, the ways that you entertain and have fun, those kinds of things. It might have to do with your kids or your first child. If you have Aries in the fifth house, sixth house is gonna have to do with like your work, possibly like work friends or co-workers. Could also have to do with like your pets, your health, like your physical health, not so much like mental health, but physical health. But that has an opposition, so it could be both, like physical health weighing on the mental health or mental health weighing on your physical health, right? If Aries is in your sixth house, it might be work, things with work. If you work a job or stuff like that, or if you have employees, if you own a business and it's going to have to do with your employees, that kind of stuff. Seventh house is going to be your significant other. If you're in a long-term relationship, you've been with somebody over 6-7 years, it might have to do with literally them. So watch over them, take care of them, help them, pay attention to them in a way, or maybe, I don't know, you guys might be breaking up or something. I don't know. Seventh house is others. It might have to do with therapy. Like if you end up going to therapy or if you have a therapist, it might literally be talking about your therapist. Sometimes astrology is very literal like that. Eighth house is going to have to do with other people's things. So stuff that you share with other people. It could also have to do just with your intimacy with yourself and with others. Like in connection in that way. And inheritances, stuff like that. Your taxes. You got Aries 8th house. Watch out for your taxes. Do them taxes. Ninth house is going to be talking about your belief systems. If you're younger and you might be going to school or like college or something like that, it might have to do with that. But basically things around like higher learning, spirituality, maybe religion, beliefs. Also travel, long-term travel. If you plan, like could have to do with stuff around that. 10th house is going to be your career or like your public life, your public image, the things, your legacy, those kinds of things. So if you have an Aries 10th house, is going to be your public image, the stuff that you're putting out into the world for people to see about you. You have to do with that. 11th house is going to be your friend groups. It might literally be like your friends or your friends' children, or like if you have children that aren't yours, sometimes the 11th house can literally be like your stepkids. It could have to do with your networks, your dreams and aspirations, your like tribe, that kind of stuff. And then 12th house is, of course, the more behind the scenes stuff. It's 12th house is like the things that happen behind the scenes. So if you have an Aries 12th house, it could have to do with your dream life. It could be stuff that's happening to you mentally, like mental health stuff that's coming up. If you have like bigger animals, so like 6th house is more like dogs, cats, domesticated animals. 12th house is like wild animals or bigger animals like horses and shit like that. Horses or exotic animals and stuff, or spirit animals, those kinds of things. 12th house heavily is like mental health. It's also like, I think of the 12th house as like retreats or any places that you go to kind of be in like solitude or kind of be in a different energy for a long period of time. Not just like a little travel or something like that, but like you're switching your whole life over, right? Yeah. Okay, I hope this was helpful. Also, I have some new offerings coming up. So March 21st, I'm launching some subscriptions on my website, bobastrology.com or bobbyperfection.com. But I will be having two different subscriptions. So one is for people who just like to get readings or want to know more about their own life and don't want to really like learn astrology in that way. I'll be offering a subscription for that where you can subscribe monthly or yearly, and then you'll get quarterly readings, and you'll also get monthly updates of what's going on for you and in your chart. And then I also will have a subscription for people who want to learn astrology in a more practical way and also be able to start applying it versus just being this like out there thing, because astrology literally is a study of nature. It's how we flow in nature. It's these patterns that nature has that we're studying. And so I think it should be so, I just don't think it should feel so far out that we should know this, because if you have an idea of like how things are affecting you in your life, you can better tend to those things in your life, whether they're good or bad. You can prepare for good things, and you can also have a better support system and resourcing for negative experiences in your life. You know, like we can't stop things from happening. We can't stop ourselves from going through the fire, but we can also equip ourselves to have um, better support around them, and also be able to really take on opportunities and really like take off. You know what I'm saying? So if you want to learn astrology, I also have a subscription for that, which will be a monthly subscription or a yearly subscription, and you'll get monthly lessons. You'll have access to all my old, I'm trying to transfer them over now, but access to all of my old writings that you can look through, all of my old articles and stuff that I've written over the years. And you'll get a lesson a month, and then we'll also do, I'll have quizzes and stuff that you can take for yourself, self-paced stuff that you can do each month. And yeah, so I'm excited about all of that. And that will drop on the new year, which is March 21st. And that is all. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you next time. Thank you. Okay, in that one and in